Hey, what's good? My name is Saturday, and this is my EDM production series. Whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, I've designed this series to cover everything I know about music production. If you struggle to finish your songs, if you feel like your songs don't sound professional enough, or your mixes and masters aren't loud enough, or you just want to learn music production, then this series is for you. In this series, I'm going to produce a song from complete scratch and finish the entire thing with you. This series is going to cover songwriting, mixing, mastering, sound design, and the business side of music, such as cover art design, marketing, collaborations, and file management. I'll also be wrapping up this series with some DJ tutorials as well. By the end of this series, you'll be proficient in all of these subjects, as well as have the confidence and ability to finish songs quickly and consistently. I started producing about 10 years ago, and I remember feeling really overwhelmed by everything, and I really wish I just had someone to sit down with me and walk me through how to do everything. I didn't really know what I was doing, so I was paying for studio time and just had a bunch of questions that I would bring to talk to the engineers about, but that got expensive really quick. And to get my knowledge to where it is now with studio time would have cost me thousands of dollars, and that's the reason I'm making this. So rather than pay, I'm going to provide that to you guys absolutely free. And there's only 3 things that you need to get started with music production. The first thing you need is a computer, and I use a 2020 MacBook Pro with an M1 chip, and I would recommend 16 gigabytes of RAM. I would also recommend that you get 2020 or later. Any MacBook that's pre-2020 is going to have Intel chips, which are a lot slower than the newer M series chips that Apple produces. The second thing that you'll need is a DAW, or digital audio workstation. This is just music software. For this series, I'm going to be using Logic 11.1. If you're on an older version of Logic, it'll still work. It's just not going to have as much functionality, and the interface might look a little different than mine. Other DAWs include Ableton, FL Studio, Pro Tools, Cubase, Reason. So I would recommend just picking whichever you feel most comfortable with. There's not going to be a difference in sound quality or anything. It's just they have different algorithms, different stock plugins. Things just work a little bit different between DAWs, but they're all essentially the same thing. I started with Logic, so that's just what I use. And the final thing you're going to need are a pair of headphones. This doesn't really matter. I would just recommend you get something that's over-the-ear headphones, like studio headphones, and not earbuds. But I've produced songs on gaming headphones before, and it came out fine. Now, there's also 4 things that I would recommend you get depending on your production style. So the first thing would be an audio interface. I would recommend getting the Scarlett 2i20 if you're just a beginner. That just stands for 2 inputs and 2 outputs, and they're pretty cheap. I think you can find them for like $150 or $200. Another thing I would recommend is a MIDI controller. This isn't necessary. You can still draw in notes in your DAW and everything. I just like it for the workflow and being able to come up with melodies quickly. I play piano, so I like having a keyboard that I can plug into my computer and play. I would also heavily recommend a subscription to Splice. I believe for students, it's $8.99, and the standard version is $12.99. This is just like an app that has a huge sample library that other producers and creators can upload to. So you'll get like credits, and you can test out certain samples and listen to them, and then download the ones that you like. It's super useful. I use it in every single project that I produce. It's not necessary. You can always search through free sample packs or pay for other creators or producers' own sample packs. But if you're just starting, this is definitely the best bang for your buck. A lot of people would subscribe for a month and then just download a bunch and then save that and then cancel their subscription. So it's just a really good way to get started. The last thing I really recommend is the synthesizer Serum. The synth itself costs $200. You can also rent to own it through Splice, but there is a great free alternative. If you don't want to pay $200 and you're just getting started, I would recommend getting Vital. It's a really good, powerful synth and has everything that you need to get going. The last thing I want to cover before jumping into the session is to go over some really useful free plugins. I'm going to have links for all of this stuff in the description too, so if you want to go down there and download everything, I'll provide that for you guys. So I would highly recommend getting Span. This is probably my most used plugin. All it is an analyzer that you can calibrate, so it can show you like mids and sides, which I personally use it for, so it's great for seeing a stereo image. Another plugin I highly recommend is Ulian Loudness Meter. I use this for mastering as well as on submixes, and it's a useful tool to make sure that your tracks are either industry standard or just to a volume that you know sounds good for your own sound. Isotope has a really good plugin called Ozone Imager 2. This is also an analyzer, but it gives you the ability to adjust mid and side frequencies, and it's really great for like quick fixes on things. Nova has a really amazing dynamic EQ. If you can't afford Pro Q4, I would recommend getting this. It's an amazing free dynamic EQ. I'll cover what that does later on, but if you don't have one, I would recommend getting this. Vital is a really great synthesizer. I kind of talked about that a little bit already, but if you don't want to pay $200 for Serum, just get this instead. You'll be able to like follow along with all the sound design stuff. And finally, there's FreeClip. This is a decent alternative to K-Clip 3. I used to use this before I got K-Clip. It'll still get the job done and everything. It just has less functionality than K-Clip, but it still will do everything that you need it to. There's plugins that I'm going to be using that I would recommend buying if you have money to spare. If you're just starting out, I would recommend just trying demos or something though. Don't throw down like hundreds and hundreds of dollars on plugins that you might not even need. The one I recommend the most is going to be the FabFilter bundle, specifically Pro Q4, Pro C2, and Pro L2. If you're a student, you can get 50% off the entire thing, and anytime you buy one of their plugins, you get like credit towards a discount for their next plugin. So like if they come up with a new upgrade or anything, it's cheaper and cheaper to upgrade depending on how many plugins you have from them. I use Pro Q4, Pro C2, and Pro L2 on every single project that I do, and I use tons of instances of them. So if you have a budget for a couple of plugins, these are the top 3 that I would highly recommend you get. The next thing I would recommend getting is Serum. It's just an amazing synth. We're going to be using that for the sound design course, and we're going to be using that a ton throughout the series. If you don't want to spend $200, but you don't really like Vital, you can always rent to own it through Splice, and I think it's like $20 a month or something. K-Clip 3 is a fantastic clipper. I use that on every single track as well. It has a great UI and has a lot of really nice features that FreeClip just doesn't have. Melodyne or Antares Autotune are really, really great plugins, but if you don't plan on working with vocals, I wouldn't recommend getting them. Out of the two, I personally use Melodyne. I love it. I've used Antares Autotune. I just didn't really care for it as much, but friends that do hip hop really like Antares. So the Native Instruments library is a really great sample library. It comes with a bunch of like piano samples, bass, brass, woodwinds. It just has a lot of like great instruments that you can use and play around with. So I use this all the time. If you're more just focused on synthesizer, then probably pass on this. These next 5 are like, they're not super necessary, but I use them a ton, more so for speed than anything else. The first of which is Kickstart 2. This is just a really good plugin that creates like an instant sidechain. So if I don't want to like go through the trouble of setting it up and I just want to do it really quickly, it's a great time saver. That's pretty much the only use for it. It's not super expensive and I got it on sale. So Kick 2 is a really great plugin as well. I use this for layering my kicks, and it's basically just a synthesizer that's used for that purpose. I'm just able to get really good sounds really, really quickly with this. Vocal Synth 2 is a vocoder that you can also rent to own on Splice, or I think it's also $200. Again, if you're not working with vocals, this might not be super necessary, and you can achieve similar effects with stock plugins in Logic. The control you have over this thing though, and the sounds that you can get with it, like I love this plugin. Next up we have Valhalla Reverb and Delay. These are both really easy to use. They're kind of like set it and forget it, and they have really good sound quality, and they're like a pretty decent price. They're not like super crazy. And the final plugin I would recommend that you get if you have extra money is Decapitator. This is a distortion / saturator. It's just a really great plugin and gives a lot of like really pretty tones. All right, so with all that out of the way, let's hop into a session and get started on this track. When you open up Logic, you might get this pop-up window. Don't worry about this, just hit continue. Rosetta is just an algorithm that runs plugins that are native to Logic. The newer chips operate with plugins that were native on Intel. So that's all that is. Just hit continue. You don't need to worry about it. All right, so now we're at this window here. For now, I just want you to ignore everything. We're just going to hit choose. Make sure empty project is selected. It should be by default. And we're going to choose that, and it's going to open a project. And we're immediately going to get prompted with this window because we have no tracks in our entire session. So I'm just going to click enter to choose an audio track. And now let's kind of go over the layout of how this all looks. This giant section in here is your arrangement window. So this is where we're going to be building the song from, adding all of our individual tracks. and adding our sounds and everything. So a bulk of the work is going to be done here. Now on the left side over here, this is your inspector region. We're going to be using this a good amount as well. Generally, I use it more for audio and less for MIDI, but it has some really cool functions that we're going to be using a lot. So we'll cover that when we get there. And then if we press X on our keyboard, this is going to bring up the mixer. So right now there's not a lot going on because we only have the one track that's going to our master channel. But this will get gigantic later on. And this is literally just when you see pictures of those studios and they're like giant consoles that are in the room. This is literally that. It's just a digital version of it. So I'm going to press X again to close that. If you don't like this inspector region taking up space on your screen too, you can press I to toggle that on and off as well. If you press Y on your keyboard, this is going to bring up your library. So this is all like stock sounds that come with Logic. It has like some drums. There's like acoustic guitars. I believe there might be a synthesizer in here. I think there's like a piano and stuff. I use a lot of third-party plugins and like emulated instruments. So I never use this library anymore. But if you're just starting out and don't have anything to use, I would highly recommend going in here. I know they updated a lot of their sounds and libraries pretty recently, so I'm sure they're pretty good. So I'm going to press Y to toggle that away. There's another menu I want to show you guys. So if you hold Option, Command, and press P, this is going to bring up your Notepad. It's also this little button right here. This is one of my favorite features in Logic. I use this religiously. I have it open almost the entire time I'm working on music. And I always start with a song title at top. We'll change that once we get a title. And then I always do the key of the song, the BPM of the song, and then I'll do a songwriting section, I'll do a mixing section, and then I'll do lyrics. And I can just kind of take notes if I'm like tracking vocals, for example, and I like a take, I can do, like take 5 was good, take 7 was good. If I'm working on something and I know that there's a couple of tasks I need to do after this to check something, I can write them down in like my songwriting or my mixing. And I can also leave notes for myself. If I leave the project, like, hey, you left off here or something, just to give yourself like a mental note of where you were last at in your project. I absolutely love this and I use it a ton. So again, Option Command P, we're going to close that window now. Now you'll notice my toolbar probably looks different from yours. If you hover, I don't know how well you can see it, but there's this space in between this arrow and this little icon here. Anywhere, it should be anywhere like to the sides of this main toolbar. Again, yours is going to look different, that's fine. But if you hold Control and click in here, you'll get this option for Customize Control Bar and Display. So if we click on that, this is how I have mine set up. So I changed mine to custom. I think it's on like Beats and Projects originally, maybe. So if you want to set yours up the same way I have mine, just copy whatever's in here. I don't think I changed a ton. The one thing that if it's not selected, I want you to turn on is low latency monitoring mode. We're going to be using that a lot. This is a really amazing tool. So I'm going to just exit out of here by clicking out. If you go to the top left here where it says Logic, you can go to Settings. And then under Settings, we're going to go to Audio. And now under Audio, let me drag this over here. You'll notice I'm using a Thunderbolt. This is my audio interface for my input and my output. But change your buffer size to 1024. This is just how many samples it processes. Without getting super complicated with it, the higher this number is, the better processing your computer does with your session. So it'll run more effectively. If you have this super low and you're working on a big project, your project's probably going to crash a lot, or not crash, but it's probably going to freeze and like you're going to get overload issues because you're not running at a high enough buffer size. Something to keep in mind, you'll notice this this like thing here that is saying resulting latency. Latency is literally just delay from your audio going through the interface, processing, and coming back. So it's literally just a delay. As this project gets bigger, especially if you're working with a vocalist and you have a massive project and you're at the max sample rate, something you'll notice is you're going to have nonstop latency or delay that you can't really get rid of. So what you can do is, this is the low latency mode that we activated in that custom setting. If you activate this, it'll bypass that. We're going to cover this when we get to tracking vocals a lot later on in the series. So if this is a little confusing, just don't worry about it. It's not a huge deal. I'll cover that when we get there. So I'm going to bypass that for now. Now, if I hold Option, you can scroll up and down to move these tracks to make them bigger. You can also scroll left and right to zoom in. And what these little things on top are is this little giant bar is called your playhead. This is just where your song is going to start playing from and like where you're currently placed. And these numbers indicate bars. This is pretty standard, but 4 beats in a bar. We are in a 4/4 time signature for this. So there's 4 beats for every bar. One thing I want you to look at is this little thing up here. So this is our tempo. So right now, by default, mine is set to 120. I think that's the standard default. I'm not sure. So I am going to be producing this song at 130 BPM. So what I can do is click in here and drag up. You can also double click in here and type and then hit enter. Does the same thing. But this is just going to snap it so that when we're working, we're in the correct tempo as the song. I just know for myself, I tend to produce at 130. I just like it. That's just a personal preference. So let me open the save menu real quick. So I'm going to do Command S real quick. And just a note on all these key commands, I'm going to be providing a free cheat sheet for you guys in the description on throughout this entire series. I'll have it available. So if there's a key command that you missed or are a little unclear on or anything, I'm going to have all of my favorite and like most used key commands in a really organized cheat sheet for you guys. And I'll also have some other ones that I don't use as much, but that are just kind of good to know that'll be in there too. So this is our save menu. So I believe by default, it will go to Logic here. Now, how I would recommend storing and saving your files is to get an external hard drive. So I have an external hard drive. It's a solid state drive. I have the Samsung, what is it? I don't know. It's like Samsung T7 or something. It has a terabyte of storage on it. I would highly recommend that you save your projects to an external drive. So I keep all of my projects on this, and it frees up a lot of space on your actual computer so your computer can run a bit faster. And it also protects you in case something were to happen to your computer. I actually have 2 of these external drives. So I have one that's like my operating one that I use when I'm working on a session. And then I have a backup that I literally use just to like back up all my data. I try and do that anytime I'm like ending a session. I'll export that entire project over there just so I have my working external, and then I have one that's like safe with everything stored on it as well. So what I'm going to do is I have this folder in here that I made because I like to stay super organized. So I'm going to go to music, sessions, and projects. And I'm just going to save it in here for right now. We'll move it in a second. Let's name this YouTube series EDM. And we're just going to save it as, if it's set as a package, change it to a folder. It'll just consolidate all of your information a lot cleaner. So we're going to hit save. One thing about your external drive that I want to mention is these, let me open, if you go to your, I'm going to hold Command and press space to open Spotlight. And then if I type in disk utility, this will bring up anything that's connected. So it's like my internal hard drive, and then this is my external hard drive. So you'll notice, I'm going to hit erase here. So you'll notice that my format is set to APFS. I believe when I got this, it was set to, I forget what it was set to, but assuming that you're on a MacBook, just double check to make sure that the formatting of your external drive is correct. It'll just help with optimization and prevent any like potential like corruption issues or anything. Before reformatting though, if you do have stuff on here, make sure you export that somewhere safe before erasing it. And then once you hit erase, you can just change this to APFS if you're on a Mac like I am. Now, one quick thing again with BPM, there's a bunch of different ranges depending on what genre you're producing. I would recommend sticking sort of within those guidelines. Obviously, if you're feeling something a bit faster or a bit slower, go for it. But the genre I generally produce is bass house, so I'm usually around 128 to 130. But bass house can also be 125. It can be up to 135. Like there's generic rules for every genre, but you don't have to like strictly follow those 100% of the time. So I just wanted to kind of like clear that up. And one last thing I wanted to cover involving the arrangement window is you'll notice this like little gray, this spot that's like gray. This is for a loop. It's also called in Logic, they call it cycle, but it's just a loop. So I can click in here. So I single clicked and now it's yellow. And now if I press space to hit play on my keyboard, I'll click here and drag it just so it doesn't go all the way. So you'll notice that I'm starting a loop now. You can toggle this on and off by pressing C. And then if you want to extend this loop, because right now it's only going to 3, I can click in here and then I can hold and drag right. And now I can make this loop however long I want. I can also go all the way over here and drag this left or right. And this is a super useful function. We're going to be using this a ton. All right, so the last thing I'm going to cover in this kind of like intro overview video is Splice. Splice has a website, and then you can download the app to your computer from there. So I have the app right here, so I can just click here and it'll pop up. And this is what your window is going to look like. They have tons of like presets for different synthesizers. They have all sorts of like one-shot or loop samples that you can get for drums, vocals, like all of this stuff. They're made by producers. The quality will vary depending on who produced and mixed and potentially mastered whatever their sample they're uploading. But there's some really like renowned, really good producers that upload to here. I use this app a ton. It's very useful. I believe they give you 100 credits a month, if I'm not mistaken. Each one-shot sample is only like one credit to use too, so you can get a ton of samples really quick and build up a pretty decent library. We're going to be using this in the next video when we do some drums, and you're going to get very familiar with this. Let me see. And in apps and plugins too, you should be able to click on manage plans and select options to rent to own specific plugins. Apparently I did this a few years ago with Vocal Synth 2, which is a vocoder synthesizer. I think I paid like 20 a month for like, I don't know, like 10 months or something. I don't know, but it's a really cool feature that they have so that you can kind of buy plugins that you like on credit. Obviously do that within your own budget, but really cool feature. So that's it for this video. In the next one, we're going to actually start working on a track and get some ideas going. If throughout this series anyone has any questions, feel free to post them in the comments. I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. And if you can like and subscribe, it would really help me out. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.